So death and inside story, I have a complete book summary on it. So I will start from the introduction, right? Sadhguru sets the tone, by addressing the universal fear of death and the mystery surrounding it. He argues, that death is not a tragedy or an end, but a transition, something every human, must faced with awareness rather than fear, right? So the books here, aim to demystify death and prepare the reader spiritually, mentally, and practically. Part 1 is here death, a psychological perspective. Why death matters. People fear death because of attachment, to identity, body, and memory. In reality, here, death gives meaning to life. Without death, here, life would lose urgency and value. Denial and delusions. Modern culture often here ignores and hides death. Example, beautifying corpses, right? Euphemisms like passed away. Daniel prevents true spiritual inquiries. Facial mortality, contemplating, death helps one life more consciously. The yogic transitions, encourages, awareness of morality daily. Part 2 is here, the mechanics of death, yogic science. What is death here? According to yogic science, death is a shedding of the 5, sheets or koshas, right? That we call the physical body, mental body, energy body, and intelligence body, and bliss body, right? So death is the exit of soul, that we call jiva. And from this layer, the moment of death here is death is not just the stopping of breath. Conscious yogis can predict, or choose the time of their death. The soul exists through specific points, in the body, right? Each exit, point influences the next birth or liberation. The 13-day process after death here. After death, the prana, that we call the life energy, and the manas, that we call mind, stay in the physical realm, right, for 11 to 14 days. Rituals done in the period are crucial to assist the departing being to move on. Specific Indian rituals here, Pindadan, Shraddha, are designed based on deep energetic science, rebirth and liberation, right? If the jiva has, unresolved tendencies, it takes another birth. If one attains, complete awareness or mukti, no birth occurs. Liberation is not about going to heaven, but freedom from, compulsive cycles. Part 3 is preparation for death, conscious death. Yogis prepare for death, throughout life through shraddha, that we call the spiritual practice, right? A conscious death is the highest achievement, existing the body with awareness. Importance of the dying atmosphere. The people's, soundings and the energy around, the dying person here affect their state at the moment of death. Practices like here chanting, silence, incense, and mantras helps easy the transition, right? Cremations versus burial. So cremation is preferred in yogic science as it, disintegrates the body quickly and serves ties with the physical world. Burials here, especially without awareness, may trap the energy, leading to disturbance. So part 4 is ghosts, spirituals, and afterlife. Do ghosts exist? Yes, according to the Sadhguru, disembodied being exist. Some souls fail to transition due to attachment, sudden death, or improper rituals. Possession and here exorcism. Right here, yogic systems offer methods to deal with spirits. Like yogic systems offer methods to deal with spirits that disturb the living. Certain beings are drawn into energy sources and can create disturbance, helping the dead. Rituals and resemblance like here tarpan are not superstition. They offer closer to the death and peace to the living. Part 5 is death in yogic culture. Here Mahasamadhi, a rare supreme state, where a yogi leaves the body consciously and permanently. Temples and here samadhis built at these sites. Adi Yogi, Alayam are energetic power centers. The Saptarishis and deathlessness. 7 sages, Saptarishi, are believed to have transcendent death. These beings are said to guide humanity energetically from higher plans. Practical guidance that how to handle a death in the family. Remain calm and do not feel loudly near the body. It disturbs the soul. In short, proper rituals are performed to help the soul transition smoothly. What you can do now? So practice meditation, awareness, and detachment to prepare for graceful exit. Contemplate. Contemplate morality daily, not morbidly, but to elevate consciousness. Fearlessness and joy. The ultimate goal is to live in such a way what you fully alive and not afraid of dying. Death becomes just your doorway, not an end, right? So final message here, Sadhguru emphasizes here that death is not the opposite of life, but of birth. Here life is eternal, death is process. By understanding and accepting it, one can transform fear into freedom and ignorance into insight, right? So here, brief summary of the core ideas here, that Sadhguru's death and inside story explores how fear of death arises from ignorance. Most people fear death here because they see it as an end or something dark and unknown, right? But in reality, death is a natural spiritual transitions, not a tragedy. Once you understand the true structure of life, the universe here, and the self, death becomes something you can accept, even embrace with awareness and peace. So right, so here elaborate in depth explanation elaborate in depth explanation here, that fear comes from ignorance, not from death itself. Sadhguru states here the fundamental reasons we fear death, right, is because here we don't understand what it truly is. In the modern world here, we have been conditioned to think of death, a full stop, the destruction of identity, a painful or tragic event. But these perceptions are emotional and psychological, not spiritual or existential truths, right? So here death is not the end, it's a transition. So in yogic science, life and death are both part of this same process. According to the Sadhguru, you are not the body, right? Not even the mind. You are a conscious entity that we call the Jeev, right? So here death is simply the soul shedding its physical and energetic layers, right, to move into a new phase, be it rebirth here, disembodiment, or liberation, that we call moksha, right? So here death is like changing clothes, not the annihilation, not the alienation of the self. So death is like a changing cloth, not the annihilation of the self. Spiritual truth removes fear. If you understand here, life continues beyond the body, consciousness is eternal, and you can influence your journey even after death through awareness and preparation. Then death here no longer appears scary. It becomes an opportunity for liberation, a doorway into something greater, not a black void. Our attachment creates suffering. Sadhguru explains that we are totally attached. Our identities, name, job, relationships, our body, our emotions and memories. So this attachment makes us fear losing everything. We are here, but once we are detached, we start realizing that we are beyond all of it. That realization brings freedom, not fear. So here contemplating death enhances life. So ironically, Sadhguru says here, that remembering death daily, makes life deeper and richer. When you live, with the awareness that your time is limited, you stop wasting energy on trivial things, right? You live more fully, more consciously. You stop fearing and start living with intensity and purpose. Death can be conscious a process, right? Death can be a conscious process. Yogic transitions are realized. Yogi can choose their moment of death. Sadhguru calls this Mahasamadhi, right? The ultimate spiritual acts where one lives the body with full awareness. So he urges that this possibility exists for everyone, not just saints. So if we prepare for it, through spiritual practice and understanding. So the final thought is here, in Sadhguru's view, death is not a calamity, but a critical, sacred dimension of life. When you see death, when you see death, here not with fear, but with clarity, you become free, right? And that freedom leads to fearless, joyful life. So here, the death and inside story by Sadhguru complete here depth, I will try to again repeat here that Sadhguru's death here and inside story is not a book about sorrow, but a manual of spiritual insights meant to help readers, understand and accept it, and even here transcend their fears about death. It guides, you into the mystical dimension of existence, answering, uncomfortable questions and revealing truths, we rarely dare to explore. According to Sadhguru, death is not the opposite of life. It's a complete complement, right? It's complement. So the book is structured in this three part. Death is but a poor. Death is but a poor. The mechanics of death, preparing of a good death, right? Preparing for a good death. The nature of the death, not an end but a transition. So most people regard that most people here regard death as a tragic end, an abrupt cessation of life. Sadhguru completely reframes this here. Death is not destruction, it is a shift in your level of existence. So just as sleep allows us to rest and rejuvenate, death is nature's way of dismantling the physical structure so that the being may either rest, move on and be reborn. It is an essential part of the cyclic nature of cosmos, birth, life, death and rebirth. Spiritual values here, by recognizing death as here transitions, not an end, we begin to live with less fear and more awareness, aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life. So inner experiences here beyond the physical senses, Sadhguru shares insights from his own yogic experiences, ones that touch here realism, inaccessible to the average mind. He speaks of seeing death not through signs of belief but through inner knowing. He describes moments when he has been present at the time of death and sensed the exact moment of life energies left the body. The key message here, there is more to you than your body and mind. Understanding death here requires inner stillness and perceptions, not mere logic. The spiritual value here, you begin to seek the truth of who you are beyond the thoughts, emotions and body. This can be beginning of deep spiritual growth. So practical preparations here, living and dying consciously. Unlike typical death discussions that here induce fear, Sadhguru speaks and clarity and compassion on how to prepare for your own death, how to be with a dying person with sensitivity, how to handle the death dead body respectfully, that how to handle the dead body respectfully, and even how to support the dead after they have passed through mantras, rituals and presence. So he also explains ancient yogic knowledge such as Mahasamadhi, the conscious and the voluntary exist from the body by realized yogic, right? Realized yogi. Spiritual values here, that this empowers you to live life without denial. Facing death consciously helps you, live meaningfully and prepare not with fear but with grace. Consciousness and compulsions, right? Consciousness and compulsions, breaking the automatic cycles. Human beings often live mechanically, consumed by daily routines, craving, emotions and attachments. Sadhguru reveals here how this unconsciousness, creates a bondage even after death, keeping up trapped and karmic loops. He teaches that conscious living leads to conscious dying, and that's the only way to exist and exit the compulsion cycles of the birth and death. The spiritual value here, this point urges you to wake up the importance of awareness in every moment. Only when you become conscious of death can you become truly conscious of life. So the aftermath and here reincarnation, the journey continues. So here the book explains that death does not erase who you are. What remains is your karmic imprint, your tendency, your desires, your fears, carried forward in your mental, pranic energy bodies, right? So this guide, the journey through afterlife, realism, until you are reborn in a new body that matches your karmic structure. The soul does not immediately vanish or get reborn. There is a process, and what happens depend on how you actually die. What happens depend on how you die, your awareness level and your karmic baggage you carry. The spiritual value here, this prefers and this offers profound clarity on why certain lives feel inexplicably difficult or smooth. They are not random but karmic here continuation. Ghosts and spirits their natures and influence, right? So this part of the body, may surprise, many. Sadhguru explains the science of ghost, spirit, and here disembodied, beings, not as here folklore, okay, but as energetic, realities, right? So when someone dies in pain, violence, and with unfulfillment, desires, their energy may not transitions properly, they actually linger between realism, okay. So here such entities, can affect the living emotionally and mentally. One must take care during death rituals to help the soul move on. Certain places here retain death imprints that can disturb the sensitive, right? Okay, so spiritual value here, you become aware of energetic consciousness and of violence, death, suicides, or ignorance around rituals, and can better support peacefully transitions. So achieving a good death, a graceful exit, a good death is not about having no pain and here dying in luxury. It is about dying with awareness, acceptance, and grace. Sadhguru says here the last thought or emotions you carry, at the moment of death defines your next step, right? So if your death is angry, afraid, or in resistant, that energy carries forward. But if you die in clarity or surrender, it becomes a launch pad for spiritual evolution. I mean to say, spiritual values here, this inspires you to live with intentions every day, so that death, whenever it comes, is not a shock but a release. The experience of the death here, feeling, not thinking. So once a person dies, their logical, analytical, mind is gone. So what remains is feeling, pure emotion without reasons. So here, that's why, if they died in fear, they may continue to feel fear for a long time. So if they were joyful, they may glide smoothly into the next realms, right? So this is why here creating a positive environment around the dying persons is crucial. Playing chants avoids here mourning in their presence and helping them die in peace. So spiritual value here, that if teaches you how to support others, with true compassion, and gives you responsibility to create a grace for those who can no longer help themselves. So living consciously, death as your daily compassion. The ultimate message of the book is here: only a fool lives, as though he has all the time in the world, right? So only a fool lives here, as though he has all the time in the world. So by becoming aware of death, you start appreciating every moment. You drop trivial conflicts, you move closer to the core of your being, and open yourself to spiritual liberation, mukti, right? So spiritual here value, this awareness can free you from fear and bring you to life's deepest truth, that the goal is not just to live long but to live fully. So final thoughts is here a guide, not a gloom. Death and Inside Story is not a morbid book, it is a spiritual guide. It shows how death is not a mistake or a punishment, but a mirror to life itself. If you understand it, you don't just learn how to die better, right? You learn how to live better. So yeah.